There's a lot of exciting baseball going on right now, but I would argue one of the most fun and exciting teams to watch right now, they are fish, the Miami Marlins. If you're not watching their games, you're missing out.
You are Locked On MLB Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans. Welcome to a Locked On MLB crossover between Locked On MLB and Locked On Marlins. This is the daily podcast where we're either talking about all of Major League Baseball or your Miami Marlins, your 2026 World Series champion, Miami Marlins. I am your co-host for today. My name is Paul Francis Sullivan. Please, I'm begging you, call me Sully. Today's episode is brought to you by our good friends over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever they're calling it these days, and on Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. But the best way to get a hold of me is right here on the YouTube channel. Leave your comments. I read them all. I am not flying solo today. As I hinted before, this is indeed a crossover, and we are bringing, for the first time on the show, he has that fresh out of the box new host smell that we appreciate. It is the host of Locked On Marlins, Jeremiah Geiger. Welcome to Locked On MLB.
Yeah, really excited to join the show and chop it up, talk some baseball.
Yep, doing some fish here. Hey, before we do some fish talk and tell a big fish tale, we're going to go do the trivia question, which was born on this day, on when I did the show on Saturday, born on that day, was a Yankee star in 1925, the prime of both Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig. What teammate of Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig led the league in home runs and RBI? It wasn't Babe Ruth. It wasn't Lou Gehrig. It was another Yankee. Lou Gehrig came in third on the Yankees in home runs that year. Who was it? I am not old enough to remember that, despite Jeremiah looking at me like maybe I did. But was it Argonaut Comedy was a regular listener, got it correct. It was Bob Musial. Bob Musial of Downey, California. He was the one who did that, and he was one of the stars of Murderers Row, and he out-homered Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig that year in 1925. Some people will remind me that Babe Ruth played fewer than 100 games that year because he was not taking care of his body, and I'm just stating facts. But hey, let's fast forward from 1925 to 2025. And, you know, the Marlins went into this year without, let's just be frank here, not exactly high expectations, and a payroll not that much higher than the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. And yet, despite, let's be perfectly honest here, pretty clunky start to the season, for the last really about month of the season, or maybe even a little more, the Marlins have played some of the most exciting baseball you're going to see. And Jeremiah, before we go, do a deep dive here, let's just cover the two games right after the All-Star break, because they come right out of the gate swinging big time. Jeremiah Geiger, for those of you who don't know, please introduce the world to Mr. Kyle Stowers, please.
Kyle Stowers is unstoppable right now. There was something that switched in the offseason where when going into spring training, many fans felt like this was his last chance. Like there were such low expectations for Stowers on the big league roster, and he's just defied all of them. He's an all-star. He's a well-deserved all-star. You look at the numbers, he's hitting about 300, 21 homers, 50-plus RBIs, and it started the last Sunday before the All-Star break, in which he went 5 for 5 with 3 bombs. It was incredible, and carries that momentum into the first game after the All-Star break. Hits a home run early on, and then down by a run with you're facing Carlos Estevez, one of the best closers in the game, just hits a tank to right field for his second homer, a walk-off winner. The man is incredible. He's playing out of his mind, and he's a legitimate building block and a star for this Marlins team.
And I'm glad you use the legitimate on there, because there's sometimes, I'm not saying this to be snot-nosed here, there's sometimes when you have a team that's not doing particularly well and they have an all-star representative, there's a collective eye rolling, like, really? Like last year's like, really? There's a representative on the Rockies? Really? There's a representative. Actually, the White Sox did have a legit representative, which is Garrett Crochet, so maybe that's a bad example, but there have been years where you're like, okay, we're stretching to put one in here. There's no stretch for Kyle Stowers. None.
No.
Zero. Zilch. This guy, I mean, yes, he's been on a tear. I said yesterday, it turns out my stats were off. I said he hit 48 home runs in his last 3 games. That which would be a record. But it just seems that way. And the game that took place on Friday evening was just bananas. I mean, Sandy Alcantara pitched well until he didn't. And then they took a lead deep in the game. They blew the lead. Then the Royals started dogpiling on him. And then when Stowers hit the home run, look, I don't know how big the crowd was there, okay? And I've been to a lot of games in Oakland where it was small crowds. But you have a small crowd, those are some of the most raucous, because you're not showing up to a Marlins game unless you love the Marlins. You didn't show up to go across the bay and see the A's unless you love the A's. And those Marlin fans who were there were going absolutely banana boats. And the palpable excitement you saw at Lone Depot Park, I almost called it Marlins Park. I'm always slow to the game there. It was amazing. It was just a great, thrilling game. Like, I was watching that game thinking, oh man, this is what you love to see coming out of the gate in the All-Star break. And then on Sunday, you got a very different game. You got a classic pitchers duel. It looked like it was going to be a 1-0 win until the ageless Salvador Perez hits a home run. And then after a weird pitch clock violation thing on Xavier Edwards, which should never have happened, he gets a double. And they came this close to a go-ahead grand slam by Otto Lopez. I mean, right out of the gate, they win another series. And this team is just so much fun to watch. I mean, today's game was a blast.
Yeah, it's so fun. Like, this team is ahead of schedule. They should not be 5 games under 500 right now. They're 46 and 51. And I was just curious. So this morning I looked back a year ago today. Where were the Marlins in the standings? 29 games under 500, last place in the NL East. It's a night and day difference, and you feel something tangible. You're seeing tangible results, and you're seeing what the Marlins are building toward. And the future is exciting, but the current day is exciting too. That's why these fans got to go to the ballpark, because there's players who are flying under the radar. Kyle Stowers, Otto Lopez, as you said, won the game today. You don't hear a lot about them, but they're performing and they're showing up in big moments.
And when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about this roster and how the acquisition of Kyle Stowers shows that, well, the Marlins need to do a little bit more of that. And maybe some of the criticism I have of the breakdown after 2023, some good things did happen. Hey, let's hear from our good friends over at Supply House, shall we? If you are in need of plumbing supplies, HVAC, electrical work, let me tell you something. You got to get supplies from the site made for the skilled trades. That's Supply House. Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from more than 400 brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. If you need help with an order, Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage, and now it's your turn. Join the Trademaster program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That is supplyhouse.com. Sing that song with me. It's supplyhouse.com. By the way, I wrote that song. I don't want to brag.
It's a good song.
It's a pretty good song. I hinted at something here. A couple years ago, Marlins made the playoffs with a fun, exciting team. And because they're cheaper than Scrooge on Christmas Eve before showing up by Marley, they traded away a lot of the players. But you know what? Not all the trades were duds. For example, one of the deals that they made was with Baltimore at the trade deadline last year. When they traded Trevor Rogers, they got Connor Norby and they got Kyle Stowers, which is exactly the kind of trade, if you're going to be trading away veterans to get young players back, that's exactly the kind of trade you're hoping will happen. It usually doesn't work out that well. Usually it's we got a prospect and he played a couple of years and then we never heard from him again. They got themselves an all-star and someone who's a building block. Now, talk to us a little bit. I mean, Norby is on the team as well. And, he's not rehearsing his Hall of Fame speech, but yeah, that they got a legit all-star out of it. That's a good sign. But let's talk a little bit about the fact that, Clayton McCullough has come in after, after the managerial change after last year. And you're seeing that Stowers, Lopez, Edward Cabrera, Xavier Edwards, who I love watching. He's a fun player to watch. I love middle infielders with a little bit of a flair. This is a fun, and I like Augustine Ramirez, who seems to be turning a corner as well, and Lopez, who has pop at shortstop. Talk to me a little bit about when this team kind of flipped the switch, and how many of them are going to be here next year, which is always the key question when it comes to the Marlins.
Yeah, well, I'll start with the second part. In terms of who's going to be here in 2026, Stowers is a long-term building block at this point. Augustine Ramirez acquired at the deadline last season. The question for me with Ramirez is, will he stick at catcher? Because they got a top prospect, Joe Mack, who could debut this year, and he's a much better defender than Ramirez is. I don't mind seeing Ramirez in a DH role or first base role, but those two will be there. Otto Lopez, for the foreseeable future, he's going to be their shortstop. He's turned a page with his power. He's a really good fielder. He's always been a really good contact hitter, but the slug has started to show up in big time areas this season. Xavier Edwards,
it was so deal. Close to a grand slam.
I know. I thought it was going out. I thought it was out.
I thought it's totally out today.
Yeah, but he's been huge for us in these like clutch time, crunch time moments. And then you mentioned Xavier Edwards. He'll be here. Just a prototypical leadoff hitter, gets on base, steals bags, and he's finally playing his natural position at second base. Right. This team has turned a page. Like at the beginning of the season, they started off hot. It was fun. It was a fun couple weeks. They go back down to earth. And then we kind of hit rock bottom when the Marlins, they got swept by the Rockies at home. And at that point, the Rockies hadn't hit 10 wins. And I was like, why? What are we doing here? But right after that, they started playing better baseball. And right now, they believe in themselves. Everybody is contributing day in and day out. That's what I really want to emphasize here on the show. It's not just one or two guys. This isn't a top-heavy lineup. You have players like Stowers, Ramirez, Xavier Edwards, all the way down the lineup, 1 through 9. These guys are contributing, and the pitching has stepped up recently as well.
I think a part of it was, they played well they were really sliding. I have their schedule up here. They were 25 and 41 on the 11th day of June. They swept the Nationals. Okay. But they didn't do well against Philly. Then they did well against Atlanta. And right around the time that I arrived here in the Bay Area for the summer, the Marlins arrived and swept the hell out of the Giants, including an extra inning game there. And I remembered my mom is a big Giants fan, and I was with other people up here who are big Giants fans. And a lot of them were like, okay, they're playing the Marlins. All right, that's going to be a couple of wins on there. And suddenly the Marlins swept them. And then I got a bunch of friends who are in Arizona right now, and they're like, "Oh, okay, well, there's the Marlins. They're going to be easy pickings." And they won 3 thrillers in Arizona. So they went to San Francisco. They had a road trip to San Francisco and Arizona, and they swept the road trip. They swept the damn road trip, and then came back and continued the winning streak against Minnesota, who at the time was trying to climb back into the race, and then they got a punch to the face and they dropped 2 out of 3 there. And they have these great streaks. You alluded to the fact they opened the season with 3 walk-off wins against the Pirates.
Yeah,
and that was fun. But I think a lot of people chalk that up to, okay, it's gonna be one of those years in Pittsburgh. But as you're seeing them inch closer and closer to 500. I do not think they're going to make the playoffs this year. I don't think this is going to be Operation Detroit Tigers circa when they last year when they were selling at the trade deadline, and then came one better Tarek Skubal start away from getting to the league championship series. And who knows what they would have done then. But I do think if this team, from my point of view, if this team finishes in the high 70s, 77, 78 wins with the payroll that I could double if I win Powerball right now. And I think that's true.
You probably could.
Sadly,
that's not an exaggeration.
You get there have been years which are like the harbinger before things to come. The Giants had a pretty good 2009 before they went on their great run in 2010. The Royals, after lots of crummy years, had a pretty good 2013 before winning their back-to-back pennants and winning it all in 2015. This could be that kind of year for the Marlins if you look and say, okay, we played a lot better than we thought. We got a bunch of young players who are under control. And, another, a Jazz Chisholm trade. Yeah, everyone loved Jazz Chisholm. He wanted him there long term, but he netted him Augustine Ramirez. Right. Everyone liked Rogers, but he netted him. He got the Stowers deal. So you're saying, okay, we have some foundations here, and playing better in the second half, I think, could go a long way to give the confidence of some of these players to say we're not pushovers.
Yeah, I feel like. If they go, like you said, high 70s and they continue playing good baseball, you're looking at a team that's heading into 2026 saying we're right there. We are right on the cusp of being in the postseason again and making a run at this thing. And the window suddenly becomes wide open for the Marlins to, especially with the expanded playoffs, you get 6 spots now in each league. You get 85 wins or so, you're probably making it to the dance. And that's kind of where, as a Marlins fan, it's unexpected because they're not supposed to be playing this well at this point in the rebuild. But that makes me think of next season. Okay, if they continue playing well, then there's no reason why this team couldn't be, contending for a wild card berth possibly next year. And even this season, if something breaks right, you never know. You never know.
You don't ever know. But I think that, and in the final segment, I'm going to go through what I think their strategy should be and why we need to see a change of personality in the upstairs of the ownership. But I think with a good trade deadline and a good offseason, not talking let's go off and spend like we're drunken sailors or the Mets or the Dodgers. I'm saying smart moves, and I think that, look, Alcantara is probably going to be traded. And a couple of years ago, that would have seemed sacrilege when he won the Cy Young Award. He's not having a good year this year. There's no getting
Right.
around it. And this is a seller's market. And I think you could probably think there's enough teams out there who think he's one pitching coach adjustment to being back to a Cy Young Award winner. And if they can fleece another team, if they can pick up another Augustine Ramirez, they could pick up another Stowers, they could pick up another good pitcher and a good, maybe a good pitcher and a good outfielder. They've got the catching prospect that absolutely. What's the catcher's name again? I'm sorry,
Joe Mack.
Joe Mack. I knew it sounded like a name from a baseball video game where they couldn't get the rights to the real players. But I would rather have Augustine Ramirez be the DH. You don't necessarily, you want him for his bat. You don't want him
absolutely
because, I would rather, remember, Bryce Harper was drafted as a catcher. At some point you say, you're not here because you're the next Pudge Rodriguez. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to bring up another player who left there via free agency from the Marlins, but at least he left a World Series title in his wake. But I think a smart deal of Alcantara to bring in someone who would be ready for the 2026 season. Not some, we got a 17-year-old kid who's he's going to be the next great second baseman in the year 3984. Like, no, I'm like, let's have someone who is, in like a double A prospect who's about to make the jump to triple A, who could, or a triple, or someone who's almost major league ready. That's what they need to do. But,
yeah, I think it's going to be interesting how they handle Sandy. He's not very good. Just the numbers back it up. It's unfortunate. It's very disappointing being a Marlins fan and watching him for so many years. But the one thing I'll say about Sandy is at the deadline, if you get an offer, like you said, it's a seller's market. If a team's willing to pay the price and they're like, yeah, we understand he struggled, but we're going to overpay, then you take it. And if not, then you hold and you wait till the offseason and hope he finishes strong.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about, I'm going to take the ownership to the woodshed but do so in a way where I say, hey, let's learn from our past mistakes and see if you could really build on something here, because let's face it, there is no reason why Miami can't be a big, fun place for stars to want to play. All right. Are we hearing from our friends over at FanDuel?
Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game more exciting. You're already following the action, so why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get on the game while your friends are getting sunburned on the beach. FanDuel's a great way to track your favorite matchups throughout the day. The app is fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. And the best part is you get your money quick. There's no waiting around. It's fast payouts. And those regular season matchups that might be just boring, no one really cares about them, now they're must-watch events because you got money on the line. So whether you're placing a same-game parlay or you're watching a bet right into the ninth inning, FanDuel makes it feel like you're part of the action. And if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. So open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started.
Now, I am sure that a lot of people have forgotten the fact that if you want to think about the last time the Marlins made the postseason, you have to go all the way back. Remember, I was talking about Bob Musial, part of that 1925 Yankee team. You have to go all the way back to 2023. That's right. 2 years ago, this team made the freaking playoffs. Now, yeah, they had their butts handed to them by Philadelphia, but that was also the same year that Arizona won the freaking pennant as a road team in the wild card series. In other words, you punch your ticket and you hope you get a couple of hot weeks. And then what happened? Instead of building upon that 84-win team that was fun, that was exciting, and looked like it may be going places, the next year they not only did not build upon it, they broke it up. Okay, but we saw that some of those trades worked out. They said goodbye to Kim Ng. They said goodbye to Skip Schumacher, and here we are. Their payroll right now is they went into this year with, I believe it was less than $50 million was the payroll, which I'm sorry. When people talk about, oh, it's bad for baseball that the Dodgers are spending this or that the Mets are spending that, I say, no, it's bad for baseball when you have a team that's not spending. I'm sorry, but there should be an entry fee. And, Bruce Sherman, who I don't know, but he collected revenue sharing, just like my buddy John Fisher did with the Don't Call Us Sacramento A's. There should be an audit. If you take revenue sharing, you should have to show how you are spending it on improving the team on the field. I brought this up, and Jeremy, just bear with me for a second. As a teacher, as a public school teacher, which I am, in California, after the fires went through the Pasadena school district, burning down 2 of our schools, we got grant money for our classroom. We each got $500 to spend on our classroom. And we had to give our receipts to show what we spent the $500 on. That it just wasn't me going to the track. And so we got this thing for this class. We got that thing for the class. Boom. Because if we didn't, I'd have to return the money. I want to see something similar to that with revenue sharing. You collect 70 million pigs of revenue sharing. You better be spending that on the roster, on international free agents, on something. You have to show that. It's got to be transparent. And if the Marlins accepted that, just like the Sacramento A's accepted it, and I don't see it on the field. Now, the A's had to. They were forced to this year. So they signed the Severino and re-signing Lawrence Butler and Brent Rooker. I want to see some of that next year. If they're going to pick up revenue sharing and you got a team with a bunch of in-control players, you can use that money to shore up, get an extra starting pitcher, get a good, solid major league reliever, get one more solid hitter in that lineup. All of a sudden, this team could build upon a 78-win season and possibly take advantage in case the Phillies get long in the tooth or the Mets get suffered with injuries. We already saw the Braves tumble. They go stumbling for you this year. And the Nationals aren't doing piddly-poo. Yeah, you could take advantage of that, kind of like what team did that recently? The 2023 Marlins. So that's if they're going to get any revenue sharing, they have to spend it on the team that's right there. And there's no excuse if they don't.
Yeah, they've paid for 2 free agents over the last, I'll say 3. I'll say 3 free agents. After 2023, they kind of sat back on their laurels and didn't do anything to improve a very flawed roster. I mean,
right.
Looking back on it, that 23 team was fun. It was awesome. But when it ended, I said, now you need to improve the roster. You can't, there's clear holes at catcher. The lineup wasn't great. Let's get better, And they didn't. And I waited all offseason waiting for something to happen. And we got a washed up Tim Anderson. And that you started the year 6-24. And I was sitting there and I said, this is awful. This is depressing. This is sad. And the teardown began. Right. And now it's a new era of baseball. This past offseason, they signed Cal Quantrill, who pitched very well today against the Royals. 6 shutout innings. It was awesome. Yeah. But overall, not a flashy signing. Eric Wagaman signed him to a split contract. He's been on the Major League roster the whole time. He's been okay. Nothing special at all. I'd say below average offensively and defensively. They got to spend money on free agents at some point because it's a statement that we want to be competitive. And here's the thing with free agents and Miami. You don't have to spend a crazy amount like the Mets or the Dodgers. You don't have to sign somebody to a 7 or 8 year deal, a 3 to 4 year deal, even a contract extension to somebody like Agustin Ramirez, Yuri Perez, Kyle Stowers, somebody that's saying, okay, we're committed to you as a player and you being a part of this organization, and you're not losing any prospects while doing that. So that's the other factor. I'm not saying go out and trade Thomas White and Joe Mack for a bat or an arm. I'm saying in the offseason, supplement this young core with a couple free agent timely signings. Doesn't have to be a superstar, but a solid player. And like you said, I think that could make this team a real interesting watch in 26.
And also just keep it and that's a great point you made. Let's say it's $70 million in revenue sharing. It doesn't mean you're spending that all on free agents. It means you could, you're right. It could be an extension. And that in itself is a sign to the fans to say, hey, some of these players are going to stick around. We saw what that did in San Diego, which again, small market team in a beautiful city. When they started committing to keep some of their players to the long term, guess what? You've never seen attendance like this before in San Diego. It's the best attendance they've ever had, even in the Tony Gwynn years. And so you could be just sending that message of confidence to the players could go a long way. But another thing that happens every year, especially because you're going to get the big signings of free agents, the Juan Sotos who go out there, the Shohei Ohtanis who go out there, they're, of course, going to get the sun, the moon, the stars. But there's always a glut of veteran players who still have value, who are floating around unsigned on the edge of spring training. If you're the Marlins, that's almost where you should be going to. Sort of saying like, all right, we're not going to be the big spenders, okay? But if we get a group of several veteran players, especially one with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, who want to prove to the world that they still have value, you get a bunch of them and say, hey, guess what? You could be a millionaire in Miami for the summer. Not a bad gig. In every other sport, going to Miami is a glamour spot. In basketball and football, well, maybe not football, but in hockey, everything's a glamour spot to go to Miami. But somehow in baseball, it's a Podunkville. I don't get it. But those are if you get find a bunch of players who are like, God, I don't have a major league contract, and go shopping at them. You're not going to get the superstar. If you get several veterans, that can really help. And the other thing is when you have a bunch of young players, maybe getting a veteran or three with a chip on their shoulder. You've heard like Matt Cain and Tim Lincecum talk about the influence of having Randy Johnson on their team in 2009 had on them. Randy Johnson wasn't even on the team when they won the World Series, but we got this veteran in there. We got a Hall of Famer in there at the end of his career, to be sure. But yeah, that was having that player on there, taught him a lot of stuff and took some pressure off of them. When the Royals brought in James Shields, he wasn't a superstar. He was a good, solid pitcher, but everyone of the Royals talked about having him on that squad helped create that, help build that franchise when they took the next step, and a couple of veterans like that who won't be super expensive, who you wouldn't need to sign to a long-term deal, but you've got the Augustine Ramirez's and the Otto Lopez's of the world. Get two solid veterans with a chip on their shoulder, a solid veteran starting and a solid veteran reliever who are all looking for a gig just before spring training starts. And that could go a long way without breaking the bank. And those are inevitably going to be players who don't have a draft pick attached to them. So it's just shelling out the money you got in revenue sharing, kind of like the grant money I got, which I used on school supplies and bean bags and stuff like that we use in my class. Your hair looks fine.
Right. Yeah, no, I had to adjust the hat.
I hear you. I have to adjust my toupee every once in a while. It kind of works out that way. You don't think this is not mine. This is not my hair at all. It was a horse's tail at one point.
One of the things you mentioned when it comes to spending free agents is after that spring training period, there's players always available waiting for that contract. And that's when they take those discounts. And it almost makes too much sense for the Marlins to wait towards the end of the free agency signing period before they strike. I like the core this Marlins team has. I think they're building something, and it's very real, and they're going to be in the playoffs sooner rather than later if everything continues on the same direction. But what separates a rebuild just from an average rebuild to a great rebuild is how do you supplement it? And that starts with spending money. I think about the Astros. They drafted extremely well. The Braves. The Braves were terrible back in 2016, 2017.
Oh, yeah.
What did they do? They supplemented the prospects that they were getting with Julio Teheran. They never traded him. They never traded Freddie Freeman. They kept some guys. They established a core, and that's what the Marlins have to do. Both with the draft, you got to hit your draft. You have to hit your trades, and then when all those things come together, the final step is committing finances to the payroll and go get a free agent or two. I think that's the ticket for the Marlins.
Yeah. All right. And you're the ticket for people who want to listen to a daily Marlins podcast. Tell people where they can listen to your new show.
Absolutely.
Or it's not a new show, but you're new on the show. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah, first year hosting Locked On Marlins. It's been awesome. Monday through Friday, you can find it on the Locked On Marlins YouTube channel or on all the major podcast platforms out there. So, yeah, go over, subscribe, listen to some Marlins talk, and enjoy the summer.
All right. Thanks so much for making Locked On MLB or Locked On Marlins your first listen. Your second listen, have it be either Locked On MLB or Locked On Marlins. What are we kidding here? But your third listen, have that be the Locked On MLB Game Night Show. It's every game, every night, all season long. It's right here on this feed, the Locked On MLB feed. You get local analysis on a national scale. Find Locked On MLB Game Night on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. And we're going to go through today's trivia question. If you know the answer, put it right down here. And we're going to keep it Marlins. Who recorded the first ever stolen base in Marlins history? Who was the first Marlin to ever steal a base? Don't you answer, Jeremiah. I know you're about to answer it. He's stunned that I'm old enough to remember a Marlins free world. That's right. I remember when they were doing the expansion draft. That's how old I am. That's how old I am. So put your answers right down here at Locked On MLB. Talking about the Marlins, why they're so exciting to watch now, why they're so exciting to watch next year. If the management can just raise the payroll to mediocre, that's what we're get to the middle, and this team could be in the playoffs next year. This has been a Locked On MLB, Locked On Marlins crossover. He's Jeremiah Geiger. Easy for you to say. My name is Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.